Our top story. Today, Israel says it has bombed Hezbollah sites in Lebanon, piling pressure on the militant group already reeling after explosions targeted its communication systems. Those attacks, striking pagers and walkie-talkies on Tuesday and yesterday, killed 37 people and wounded over 3,000 others. The attacks have heightened fears of a full-blown conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. Yesterday, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said the army's focus was moving from Gaza towards the northern border with Lebanon. Charli James has the report.
Southern Lebanon rocked by artillery strikes early Thursday morning. Israel's military says this footage shows attacks on Hezbollah infrastructure and weapons facilities. It's the latest operation contributing to spiraling tensions between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah militant group. This week, a mass attack targeting pagers and handheld radios used by Hezbollah operatives killed dozens of people and wounded thousands more. On Wednesday, these ICOM radios exploded across Lebanon's south. It was the country's deadliest day since cross-border attacks with Israel began nearly a year ago. Cell phone videos show smoke pouring out of buildings after device blasts, some occurring inside homes. One of the radio explosions happened at a funeral organized for 3 Hezbollah members and a child. They were killed Tuesday when thousands of the group's pagers exploded almost simultaneously across Lebanon and Syria. Israeli officials have not commented on the blasts, but the nation's spy agency is widely believed to be responsible. And Wednesday, Israel's defense minister said the center of gravity is moving northward to the Israeli-Lebanon border.
I believe that we're at the start of a new phase in the war. Operations are carried out by all the security organizations, and our task is clear: ensuring the safe return of Israel's northern residents to their homes.
The United Nations and Israel's allies are urging de-escalation, eager to avoid a wider Middle East war.
We still don't want to see an escalation of any kind. We still believe that the best way to prevent escalation, to prevent another front from opening up in Lebanon, is through diplomacy.
Hezbollah called these attacks the biggest security breach in the group's history, leaving it in disarray and putting pressure on its leader to exact revenge.
Well, many of the 3,000 injured in Lebanon lost eyes and limbs, and hospitals in the country are struggling to cope with the high number of complex surgeries. Our correspondents Serge Berberi and Rawad Taha visited one such hospital in Beirut. Here's their report.
In this footage, captured by surveillance cameras, medical staff prepare to receive the first wounded. The emergency response plan has just been activated.
Yesterday around 4 p.m. we received a call from the Ministry of Health informing us of the imminent arrival of a large number of patients following the explosions in Lebanon. The entire staff, from nurses to the medical team and administration, showed exemplary professionalism and great responsibility. Within minutes, they were all at the hospital, ready to handle the situation. We had to manage not only the patients, but also their families, who were deeply affected.
At the entrance to the intensive care unit, devastated families still in shock. This man has just undergone facial surgery.
This patient was admitted yesterday with extremely severe eye injuries. He lost both of his eyes and consequently his sight. Other patients had injuries to their faces and hands. We did everything in our power to treat them.
About 100 injured were admitted to this hospital in the northeastern suburbs of Beirut. Speaking to France 24, the hospital's director praised the swift response of his teams.
Fortunately, the French Hospital of the Levant has several operating rooms, a total of a dozen. We performed surgeries throughout the night, and they are still ongoing. As the hospital director, I coordinated the efforts, ensuring everything ran smoothly. The work was managed remarkably well.
Around 20 injured patients remain hospitalized at this facility, where the emergency plan is expected to stay in effect for several more days.
Well, for some more analysis on what we've seen in Lebanon over the past 48 hours or so, I'm pleased to welcome to the programme now Miriam Ben Rad. She's the author of Mechanics of Conflict, Cycles of Violence and Resolution. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Look, we are 24 hours on now from the second round of those explosions in Lebanon. How big a blow, psychologically and practically, do you think this week has been for Hezbollah?
So maybe on the first practical aspect of the operation, this is a spectacular operation that I think Hezbollah did not expect, that most of the allies of this movement did not expect, including, of course, Iran. And the clear objective, I think, was to send a message, the message that Israel, that has been described as weakened, especially regarding intelligence following the 7th of October, is not weakened at all and can inflict major harm and damage on this movement, and more broadly, to come to the psychological dimension, to inflict shock and to create a sense of terror, a collective psychosis among the Lebanese population. So this is quite a major blow, I think, to Hezbollah, which beyond its rhetoric will have to deal with this new reality.
Indeed, and the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is to speak this afternoon. What do you think his message will be, and what kind of tone do you think he will strike today?
I think we won't see much difference from what Nasrallah stated in the past. We'll probably hear a very vengeful reaction, a promise of retribution, which has been the common line, both on Hezbollah's side, but also on the Israeli side. At the same time, I don't think we will see any major attack launched by the movement. Also because Hezbollah, through these attacks, and because of the number of civilians wounded or killed in these attacks, he's now under the pressure, growing popular pressure within Lebanon, which is a failed state, which is a state going through a major societal economic crisis. So Hezbollah cannot allow itself to go into a full-blown war with Israel, which I don't think, by the way, is the objective of Israel, despite what Yoav Gallant and other Israeli officials have declared.
That's interesting. Why do you think that isn't the objective then of Israel? Because as we played in that report, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, you just mentioned him, saying the focus is turning away from Gaza towards Lebanon. We've had these unprecedented attacks this week targeting Hezbollah. There are many analysts who say, look, this is the closest the region has been in at least a year to a full-blown war. Why do you think otherwise?
I think otherwise because Yoav Gallant is a contested figure within the security and military apparatus in Israel. Not everybody agrees that there is a shift, that the focus has shifted towards Lebanon. There is a low-level, low-intensity confrontation still on the northern front, which is by no means comparable with what's going on in Gaza. And let's not forget that the Israeli society, nearly 1 year after the beginning of this new wave of violence, is deeply divided. There is no plan for the afterwar in Gaza, which is creating a lot of tensions, not only among the Israeli political class, but among the population. So I don't think that Yoav Gallant can act on his own will. There are a lot of different opinions about what should be done, and Gaza will certainly remain the major epicenter, I think, of what's going on, with, of course, all the regional consequences that we are seeing through what happened in Lebanon.
And just a final question for you. What do you think countries like the United States, but also France, should be doing now to try and de-escalate these tensions that look to be extremely high indeed?
Well, I think indeed, in general terms, diplomacy is the only key to trying to we won't reach peace anytime soon, but to try to de-escalate indeed the ongoing tensions. The problem is that we've seen no progress on this front, so I don't know which stronger measures could be taken by the US, by the Europeans, to increase the pressure on both Israel and, of course, movements like Hamas and Hezbollah for the moment. Unfortunately, I've not seen much progress. I have the feeling that the actors are acting, these players, regional players, are acting in a very irrational way, which has been out of control.
Miriam Ben Rad, good to talk to you today. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, among the key questions being asked today is when and how were those Hezbollah communication devices tampered with? Our science and tech editor, Julia Seager, has been looking into that. She's with me now. Julia, hello. Let's start, first of all, with what we know about the initial attacks on the pages.
So the information I'm about to share with you actually comes primarily from an investigation by the New York Times. They're relying on the testimonies of 12 current and former Israeli and American intelligence services officials who were briefed on the attack and who all talk about a complex but also a long-term operation. Now, they all say that Israel is indeed behind this unprecedented attack. And as we've heard, this is an information that has neither been confirmed or denied by Israel. But there is much evidence that points to Israel because of the scope, because of the precision of the attack. It requires significant resources. Indeed, we know that Israeli operatives are the best in the world in terms of intelligence, surveillance, but also cybersecurity. The modus operandi also points to them, and we'll get back to that in just a minute. But initially, we all thought the explosive had been perhaps implanted in the pagers after the construction. So we all thought, well, how did that happen? Did they infiltrate a production line? Were they able to perhaps intercept packages? How did they get through the security checkpoints? So the New York Times seemed to actually be providing more details here. And they say, actually, they didn't add the explosive to the pagers. They didn't tamper the devices, if you will. They created them. They manufactured them. Now, what this means is if they controlled the manufacturing line, it means that they have a hand on the hardware, but also on the software, and that answers a lot of questions.
Right, but to understand this story in a bit more detail, we need to go back a couple of years, don't we?
Exactly. So, Iran-backed groups such as Hezbollah have been, for a long time now, vulnerable to this technological superiority of Israel. For example, in 2020, they took out Iran's top nuclear scientist using an AI-assisted robot that was also controlled remotely via satellite. That's how sophisticated the attack was. They also used a lot of cyber attacks to slow down the Iranian nuclear program, and they've also taken out other people using cell phones. And so all of this information, all of these incidents led to Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah to become very much distrustful and paranoid. And so he told everybody to get rid of their cell phones, get rid of all the apps, even if they were encrypted end to end. And he said, well, pretty much if Israel is going to choose high tech, we're going to go low tech with frugal innovation, because that way it's not connected to the network. It's harder to hack because there are less entry points. And he even said so publicly in a public address on TV. And so you may think this is maybe the moment where intelligence services started that program. And actually, the New York Times investigation says no, they actually started before that. Several months before that, they devised a strategy to create a shell company posing as an international pager manufacturer. And this is what we think BAC Consulting may be, a shell company based in Hungary that was able to create a contract to produce devices on behalf of a Taiwanese company, Gold Apollo. So they may have, for instance, taken care of that order, which was in their region. So what this actually means is that the devices could have also been created in any other country, even in Israel. Now, what we're told also is that there was two separate manufacturing lines. They had normal clients for whom they created normal pagers, and another manufacturing line where they created the pagers for Hezbollah members, where they were able to lace the explosive in the circuit board.
And the story gets even more confusing at that point, though, doesn't it, Julia? Because BAC is saying, actually, we don't have a production line for these
and that
pages.
actually may be true. They may not have a production line, and there may be several shell companies to try to conceal as much as possible the true identity of the manufacturer.
And so let's talk about the walkie-talkies then that exploded yesterday. Does it seem that the same mechanism was used with those that were used with the pagers?
It could indeed. Now, the model that was identified is the IC V82 two-way radio, bearing the brand of the Japanese company ICOM. It just bears the brand, but we don't know if it was manufactured by them. What's interesting is that the CEO actually had the same reaction as Gold Apollo. They said, well, we haven't manufactured this in the last 10 years, so this could be a fake. This could be a counterfeit version. So we're going to have to see how this unfolds, but there's going to have to be an investigation when it comes to these shell companies. But what's interesting is why was Israel, if it is Israel indeed, why were they able to carry out this attack? I think it's because on one hand, they do control high-tech technology, but at the same time, they're still very much entrenched on the ground collecting information as well, and they have both sides. And I think in this attack, that's what we're seeing. There's high tech, but there's also information on the ground and infiltration.
Really interesting. Thank you very much. Julia Seager for us there.